The Championship playoffs never fail to disappoint. Brentford are going to Wembley. Let's talk about it. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. Bit of a quick one coming at you today, but I thought that as we have had such a bonkers game going on between Brentford and Bournemouth, I thought we'd do a bit of a quick match reaction just after the game. If you're a Brentford fan or a Bournemouth fan or a general fan of the Championship who watched this one, get your thoughts on it down in the comments down below, because we've got several talking points to talk over that came out of this game. Heading into the match, the team news from each side was probably what we'd come to expect. Obviously, the big blow for Brentford was Norgard picking up an injury in the warm-up. They had to reshuffle their backline going into this one. However, the big blow for Bournemouth, and something that we mentioned in the preview to this game, was Steve Cook not being back and available for this game. In the end, Chris Mentham has to step up into that role, and we'll talk about his role in this game in just a second. But it was a disaster of a start for Brentford in this game, wasn't it? After Thomas Frank spoke about the start to this game being absolutely pivotal, wanting Brentford to get on the front foot. They had a corner early on, and they just threw absolutely everyone forward. They had 3 men on the edge of the box, and as you'll see here on screen now, the quick turnaround that leads Danjuma to getting in through on goal, he slots that away coolly. And after Bournemouth was such a threat on the counter-attack in the first leg, you'd imagine that Brentford would at least be wise to it in the second leg, wouldn't you? Danjuma's absolutely rapid though. He was never getting caught, and he finished it well in at the near post. And at that point, Brentford then 2-0 down on aggregate. They had a bit of a mountain to climb from that point onwards, but after that, this game absolutely exploded into life. The next big talking point from this game was the penalty. As you can see on screen now, it was given for handball. I saw on Twitter a little bit of debate about this one. From my perspective, I think it was a penalty. You can say it's harsh, and I agree with that, because, you know, what's he supposed to do in that situation with his hands? You know, when you go to slide in, your hands have to go somewhere. But ultimately, once you get your hands into a bit of an unnatural position where they're going above your head and they are going to directly impact where the ball's going, no matter how close it is, whether it was intended or not, if VAR is available in this game, I think that penalty still stands. I think that in the Premier League, that's the sort of thing that we've seen being given over the last few years. Is that a penalty? Probably, I don't know, 5 years ago, probably not, but in 2021, yeah, it probably is, to be honest with you. Ivan Toney then steps up to take the penalty and dispatches it expertly. You know, fair play to him. The guy has got nerves of steel. Only a very short run up for this one as well, but yeah, well taken. After that, we then got the next bizarre moment in this match when Begovic seemed to completely just lose his head, and that's something we'll talk about with these Bournemouth players in terms of actually losing their heads, because, I mean, it was just bizarre. You know, Ivan Toney wants to get the game back up and going. He goes to grab the ball. Begovic then comes from behind him, clatters into him to claim the ball for himself. They're each shown yellow cards in the end, but yeah, that was the first sort of signs of a few cracks in terms of the mentality and things like that starting to appear within this Bournemouth squad. And then in the lead up to half-time, the next big moment comes from the Chris Mentham red card. Now, we all mentioned it coming into the build-up for this one. How big would the blow of not having Steve Cook in that back line be? You know, not just for his footballing ability and his defensive, you know, the shape and organisation and things like that, but his leadership and know-how in that back line. In the end, Mentham, I think it's a lack of sort of awareness of his surroundings, obviously how fast someone like Brian Mbeumo can actually be on the counter-attack to those sort of breaks. And when he's got past you, as a defender, you're left with a bit of a... You're left with two choices pretty much, aren't you? You either bring him down and take the red card, or you just back your goalkeeper to maybe try and save you in a one-on-one situation. In the end, I thought he was pretty naive. He goes in for pretty much a rugby tackle in the end on him, doesn't he? Gets shown that red card, and from that point onwards, Bournemouth were always going to have a massive uphill battle. You know, being down to 10 men, Brentford by this point were already in the ascendancy, pushing more men forward. Woodgate then has the decision where he needs to change something around. In the end, he brings off David Brooks. And I'll put it on screen now, the average positions of each side today, and you can see from a Bournemouth perspective especially how deep they were for this game, and just how isolated Danjuma ended up being. You know, when we consider when David Brooks went off, he no longer had that outlet to sort of get on alongside him and sort of on his wavelength going forward. Solanke was constantly dropping deeper and deeper to pick up the ball and receive it and try to have any sort of link up with him, but Brentford were really doing well to put a stop to that. And I can understand why he did that. You know, ultimately they needed one of those forwards to go off to make way for another defender. You know, at this point Bournemouth were still in the lead. However, any sort of that attacking intensity and how Bournemouth played on the counter-attack and things like that were sort of gone in the second half, to be honest with you. You know, they tried to shuffle it around a little bit where Danjuma would play down the middle after Solanke wasn't really getting much luck. He was brought off in the second half, but that wasn't particularly working out for them. And you can then see from a Brentford point of view how sort of condensed and bunched up they were, and they had those sort of partnerships to play off each other, you know. Tony had Mbimu throughout the afternoon providing support for him. They had the two wing backs as the outlets on either side. Force is then introduced for Brentford going into the second half as they look to really commit more bodies going forward. You know, Force and Tony can have that link up and know-how between them. In the end, obviously Force scores the winner, but the Janelt goal is absolutely expertly taken, and probably one of Brentford's more underrated players as the season's gone on. I think it's fair to say, you know, while Norgard has been injured for a large part of that season, him playing as that sort of anchor in their midfield really has done a good job, and he's also got an absolute rocket in his locker as well when he wants to. And then up until that point where Brentford scored the winner, it was one-way traffic going forward. Brentford had had 9 shots in that second half before Force scored the winner. I think Bournemouth had just had the 1. And it's fascinating because this really is history repeating itself for Brentford. You know, last year in the playoff semi-final, first leg against Swansea, they lost it 1-0 like they did this year, but then won the second leg 3-1 and have progressed into the final. They'll be hoping it's a different outcome this time round. And to be honest with you, I think that regardless of who goes through in the Barnsley against Swansea match, Brentford are coming into this game in terms of the final as the favourites now. You know, make no mistakes about that. They're the team that finished third. They were in this exact same position last season, and they did show today that they got a bit of steel about them. You know, they came back from a 2-goal deficit, which a lot of teams in a similar situation probably would have crumbled. But speaking of crumbling, Bournemouth fans, how are you feeling? Let me know down below. Is this the end for Jonathan Woodgate? You know, Woodgate came in to sort of steady the ship at a time where Brentford really were rocking in their season after things had started to go wrong under Jason Tindall, but is he the right man to bring this Bournemouth squad through into next season? Probably not for me. And was that the last time that we got to see Arnaud Danjuma in a Bournemouth shirt? You know, I for one can't see him sticking around for another season in the Championship. He has been throughout the season and throughout these 2 playoff semi-finals for Bournemouth by far and away their shining player, who is more than capable of stepping up to be playing, you know, at Premier League level at this stage of his career. But I do want to say congratulations to Brentford fans. It was a great watch in the end, an absolutely great game. Thomas Frank, fair to say, throughout the afternoon wasn't all too impressed with some of Bournemouth's time wasting tactics. At the end of the day, this is why we love the drama of the playoffs, so I'll be keeping a keen eye and watching the Swansea-Barnsley game later on today, and I expect there's going to be more drama in that game. But apart from that, guys, thank you very much for watching this. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, do stick around and subscribe for a bit of regular Championship content. But apart from that, I'll see you all in the next one.